Got it. All right. So we will start with the first talk by Marc, which is titled "How to Write Text Alternatives." And in it, he will provide practical guidance for all of us to write better alternatives for images, a topic that is important, not least because according to the WebAIM Million report from February this year, that almost a quarter of all homepages in this report had missing alternative text, or of the images that has alternative text, always over 10% had alternative text like image or blank, which isn't really helpful. So it's not just important to add the text, it's also important to know what you want to say and how you can best describe image. And from his wealth of experience, Marc is here to enlighten us and give us some inspiration for better alternative text. So Marc, please take over.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. You can Bildschirm finally start.
Yeah, I've stopped my share, so you should be now able to.
All right. Now it works. So now you can see my first slide, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yes, I'm talking about text alternatives for non-text content. This is a technical term, not very, yeah, not with a lot of fantasy. As a matter of fact, this whole topic is quite basic, but as already said, it's nevertheless important. I was talking about it already a few times, and I think I will have opportunities to do it again because it's so important. It's still it's a thing that not all web pages are coming with text alternatives. And I'm starting with a short roundup what this is all about, which things are non-text contents, and then I'm trying to describe what is possible for text alternatives, and I will put the main part of this talk will be about images, because as we see soon, there are not only images that need text alternatives. The first thing you already learned today, maybe if you haven't had anything to do with this until now, because we have a transcript here in the in this event. And so the first thing is that, of course, if there is a live event like today, everything that is said also should be yes, here it is captions, and so there is also text that you can read if you are not able to hear, for example. Yeah, this is from the guideline. Text alternatives are necessary to provide for every non-text content. You can not only read it like on the screen, but you can use it also for making it bigger. You can read it without eyes in the Braille display. You can transform it to speech later again, and you can add symbols, or you can translate it into simpler language. Especially symbols can be important for making a long text divided if you're, for example, automatically replace some of the words that you don't have to read later. Then the text gets more structure, interruptions, and it's easier for people who have problems with long texts. Yeah, another quote from the WCAG, all non-text content that is presented to the user has a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose, except for the situations listed below. There are two important things I would like to mention here. The first one is the text alternative should serve an equivalent purpose, which means that every person who is watching or reading a website gets the same user experience. So this is very important. You can, of course, very detailed describe every picture that is there, and you will have a lot of irrelevant information. This is not the idea. Focus on the important part of the picture and, yeah, why you were choosing this picture. And also there are exceptions from this rule. So you don't have to provide text alternatives for every image, but if you don't provide an text alternative, normally you have to do something else. For example, if there is a captcha on your page, this does not make sense to write the solution of the captcha on the web page, because then it's very easy for tools to read the solutions. And the purpose of the captcha is to find out if there is a person or a robot software trying to send a form, for example. And so it does not make sense to write the solution for the captcha in text right under the captcha, because then every person who is trying to write software that can send the form will just try to find this text. So there are some other things, controls and inputs, for example, don't need text alternatives, but this means they need a label, for example. Time-based media at least should have an short description what this media is about. For example, talk in audio file or a video, then you should have a short summary of what's going on there. Also, tests, for example, can be impossible to describe, because then maybe the answer for questions are already given. If there is something sensory you want to give some kind of in the spec is written, if you want to create a specific sensory experience, then maybe the text alternative cannot do this. And as a matter of fact, you should try it. And yeah, if it's decorating, formatting, or if it's completely invisible, you should provide a similar user experience. If the image is invisible, of course, you should not provide a text for it, like blind.gif or something like this, because screen readers will read this out. And if the image is not visible, the screen reader should not read anything. And the same goes for decoration. If there is, for example, roses or something on the background, of course, you don't want to hear this when you're having the screen reader 10, 15 times, because you, the author of the web page put this decorative image 10 or 15 times on each page. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm testing web pages, and we have a special testing mechanism, or yeah, how to call this, methodology, which is different from the international, but it is based on the WCAG. Also, you see, I was mentioning the international specifications already a few times, and there's very similar, but we have some European differences to things that are in American laws, of course. So this is what my talk is based on, this special situation in Germany. And in this testing methodology, we have yeah, something like success criterions, and I was going through all of them, and I found that 11 test criteria are dealing with text alternatives, and I was listing them here. I'm not I'm trying to go over this fast because it will take some time, and I will not go in deep to explain all of these things, but just to mention it so you can have an impression of how many things there are to think about when it comes to text alternatives. This is for interactive elements. Of course, if you have graphical interactive elements like buttons or images with a link, you have not only to provide the content of the image, but also the function. For link, this is where it is leading to. And for buttons, this is the kind of interaction which is started by clicking on this link. And normal good example is the magnifier symbol, which stands quite often for a search. So if you have a magnifier and this is actually starting a search, then you should write this exactly as a text alternative for this particular element. Then you have, of course, standard graphics or objects, which means images that that are not interactive, that are just graphics, but they have information, and this information has to be told to people who cannot see, of course, the image. Then you might have decorative elements. I told you already, then please use the alt attribute in HTML and leave it empty. So this will make the most screen readers not to read it. You can enforce this with area, but I will talk about this a little bit later. Then captures already mentioned. For captures, you also need an alternative, but not a text. You have to provide a technical alternative. So it's very important that people that cannot see don't have to identify a picture or what's on the picture to get into in login area or to send a form, because they would just not be able to, and this is something that should not happen. You're using captures for finding out if there is a real person, but the real person, of course, should be able to solve this capture. So provide a technical alternative for this. Then we have audio and video, all kinds of media, and you also need text alternatives for these. Normally you have closed or open captions. For those who don't know the difference, open captions are subtitles which are shown always on the video. They are in the video, part of the video, and you cannot remove it. And this can be difficult for some people, and they cannot read this. Maybe sometimes these texts are not have not enough contrast or whatever. This is one way to do it, but there are better ways, and the better way is to use closed captions. And closed captions are just text which the media player is putting on the video. And if you have a good player, even the styling of these texts can be changed from the this can be changed by the user. So if this is not big enough or something else is not okay for the user, he can change it. So this is an important thing. And also for videos without audio, it's very important to provide it, because blind people will not get any idea of what is happening. And on the other side, from the audio, which you can hear. People that cannot hear don't have anything, so you need the text for these peoples so that they can read what's going on. Also, yeah, this is also about captions for recorded videos. There are captions necessary for live videos, and yeah, I'm not going too deep into the details here now. Live transcript, this is of course what I was talking in the beginning, what we see here. Audio description is a special kind of description. This is for blind people also, because if you have a video, sometimes there are things written and not spoken. And it's very important, of course. For example, chapter 1 is about text alternatives for images. This could be in big letters on the screen for 2, 3, 4 seconds, and everybody that is able to see would know, aha, this is now the first chapter, but blind people don't see anything and don't hear anything during this time. So of course, they have not the information that now the first chapter is starting, and audio description is something you can hear, and the speaker would say exactly what's happening now, what's written there. So in this case, chapter 1. And so blind people also know that now the first chapter is beginning. Yeah, there is also some a success criterion in the WCAG, which demands that the purpose of a link is can be known by the user, which means the link must have a description, an accessible name that is meaningful. And for this, it's very important that if you have a graphical link, once again, that you put a text alternative into it, which makes sense. And the last success criterion is label in name. And this means that the thing that you are seeing on the screen, for example, click here to go to homepage, should be also in the accessible name. If you have an image and there's written something like this on the image, and you're writing something else in the accessible name by using ARIA, for example, then the problem is for people that try to use the interface by speech. They are saying click on the link and they say what's visible. And the software tries to find this link, but it cannot find it because in the accessible name is something else. So this is very important. If you have an image and there is something written on it, and this is meaningful, and the sighted people know that if I click it, I will come to the page which is in the text, then don't change it or don't use other wording in the accessible name, for example, in the alt attribute, but use exactly the same text that is also visible on the picture. Yeah, so as a summing up the first part of this, what is non-textual content? It's audios, it's videos, it's silent videos, inputs and related, and it's images. And yeah, for audios and silent videos, today I learned there's more than the able player. For example, media.js, which does not provide all necessary possibilities. For example, you cannot change the format, the styling of the closed captions. And there is video.js, as I learned today, and player, written PLYR. So additional to this able player, this what is very accessible but not so beautiful out of the box. There are a few media players that you can put into your website to provide videos with text alternatives. Yeah, for inputs and related, provide a label, I told you, and images. This is the main part of this talk, and I'm going into this a little bit deeper now. The accessible name is a quite difficult thing. So what nearly everybody knows who's working with the content management system, I think, is that you have to provide an alt text. Normally you have a little input and you can write the alt text there, and it should not be too long. And this is something most of you heard of already. Instead, you can use, for the people who are developing, the ARIA labeled by attribute, and the ARIA label attribute replaces the alt text. It's not added to the alt text, it's a replacement. Yeah, and if you have no label and no ARIA label, then you can use the title. Maybe your CMS does not provide the possibility that you can give an alt text. If there is at least a possibility to use a title attribute, then use this. If you don't do anything of this, especially if you don't have the alt attribute at all, then the screen readers might read the name of the file, something like 1234 abc.jpg, and of course this is not helpful and can be even disturbing. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's quite complicated. This is yeah, from the specification how to compute the accessible name, and this is a long list, and here you can see the list items A and B, and the list goes on until I. So this is quite complicated, but I think I'm giving you the most important things today here. This is the first thing I told you. Most of you might know this. This is how to write the alt attribute. Image tag is starting. You have to give the path to the source of the image, and you have always to give an alt attribute, even if it's empty. This must not be missing, else you have not valid HTML. If this link is, if this graphic is in a link, remember you must not only inform about the content, but also about the function. So where this link is leading to. Then you have the title attribute. It's very similar. I just want to, yeah, that you see here the alt is also there. Always use the alt attribute, even if it's empty, but normally you should use the alt and not the title. If the alt is empty, but there is a title, normally you have done something wrong. Then the accessible name can also provide by area. You can use area label, which is very similar to the alt attribute and replaces the alt attribute, or you can use area label by, which refers to an already existing text on the page, and maybe this is already visible somewhere near the image or whatever. So with this, you can really give the same experience to sighted user and people that cannot see, that are blind. And I like this a lot because I've seen already very bad alt text and very nice text for people that can see, and the opposite, very long, very informative alt text that nobody can see, nobody can hear, except the few people who are using screen reader. This also is not the idea of accessibility, that you provide information exclusively for people that have assistive technology. So I like the idea very much to provide the same text for people that can see and that cannot see, And this is easily done by area labeled by or area described by. This also refers to an existing text, but yeah, a description is much longer than the label, and you can, for example, use a chapter of an article, and you can refer to this whole chapter, and in this chapter you can use structured text, which is not true for a label. Label is just a string, and structured text is not possible in a label, but in a description you can have headings, you can have paragraphs, even lists. And so this is the only way that it makes sense to provide a longer text. And of course, if this is visible, this is once again the same user experience for blind and sighted people. Here it's already written, but I'm saying this a few more times. Avoid redundancy, because if it can easily become too long. Don't overdo it. I'm talking all the time now about the importance of text alternatives, but please don't make things too long and make it redundant. Don't repeat yourself. Another way to combine text and images is using the figure element of HTML and combining it with a fig caption element. Fig caption is a caption. Oh, there is a mistake. Image source and the alt attribute also must be there always. I hope that you're not doing this, what I've done here. Also, always give. Always use the alt attribute. There's an interesting article about how do we figure by Scott O Hara, and we were talking about this before this talk, and we will give all the links that I'm using here on the description of the YouTube video later. Also, there is a link supported by most screen readers. There are some minor drawbacks, but you can use it. Even if the connection between figure and fig caption is not automatically made by the screen reader, anyway, you could use it because the text will be written, will be read by the screen reader. Of course, it's better if the connection is also provided by screen reader. Then, yeah, we are coming to the end. My recommendation is use visible text alternatives. If possible, use described by, area described by, or area labeled by, because then the sighted user and the blind user are getting the same experience. I learned only today that Safari on macOS and also on iOS does not support it yet, but it's already in the beta version, and so it will be soon in Safari also. Developers should already implement tools in the rich text editors for authors to use area described by. So this is something important. It's not only about the authors that have to think about it, and it's not only a thing of giving the possibility and input for the alt attribute, but if you want to go a little bit further, are described by, of course, the author must have the possibility to give an ID, for example, to an section or whatever you're giving a frame, no matter what it's called for the author. But if you have a CMS and there is the possibility to create a part that can get an ID, that is this is necessary if you want to refer to this ID by using area described by. So this is something that developers have to think about, how to make it possible for authors to use this feature, area described by, because they won't go into the HTML and write HTML code. I like it very much if you're using in the article phrases like the picture ABC shows, or in the flowchart 1, 2, 3 we see. So this makes clear what is the reason why you picked especially this picture. And there's a lot of things you may see in the picture, and please describe what's in the picture, and then later on you can rely on the information that you were writing down, that this is really understood by the user, and you can go with your article, and you know that the user has seen this in the picture, which was important for you as an author. Yeah, headshots. Instead of the name of a person on a picture, we see this very often. You have a portrait of a person, and there's just written Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, or whatever. And this is not helpful information. You can do this very short and saying, yeah, this is a woman with black hair in a business outfit smiling into camera or something like this. But it's nicer if you are giving more beautiful text alternatives. And last recommendation, don't overwrite visual labels with area label. This is how you could provide accessible name that is not the same like people can see. This is the problem with speech to text or voice controlled systems. If you do it like this, you're telling your assistive technology to use a link that is not there because the accessible name is different from what is visible. Yeah, this is 2 examples of text alternatives in German. I don't think anymore that these are very helpful, so I'm skipping it. As a conclusion, avoid redundancy, but provide any user with all relevant information. Overdoing it may be an obstacle by itself, and don't overwrite visual labels with area label, once again, because these things are the most important to me. The alt attributes has the widest support. Every browser knows it, every screen reader knows it. It's working with every technique. If an image is properly described in the visible text referring to a picture, an alt text that helps to identify this image makes sense. So this is image 1, 2, 3, and in the text you are saying on image 1, 2, 3 we see. This is what I like you to take away from this talk. Make it short, but give all information, and yeah, make it maybe even a little bit interesting. But write text alternatives, and even if you're not satisfied with your own writing in the beginning, with experience comes mastership. Please go on doing this. This is very important for many people. Yeah, so what is a good text alternative? Every professional always saying it depends. I hope this was a little bit helpful and you have some more ideas about how technically you can provide text alternatives and what you as an author should think about. I have some interesting links from Jeremy Keith about alt writing, and Leonie Watson. She is blind herself and writes a lot about accessibility. And yeah, she wrote an article, Emotion Matters. And this means that pictures that might have not a lot of information, but are trying to transport some kind of emotion, please don't leave the image alt tag empty because you think this is just decoration. If it's giving some mood or something like this. This is actually some kind of information, and please describe this. Try your best. It's not always easy, but give it a try. Blind people also like, yeah, to get the mood of the text. Yeah, this is about me, and that is the end of my talk. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Marc. And please give a warm round of clapping emojis in the chat for Marc, or clap.